Welcome back to Talk Show, where we defrost the freezer that no one asked us to clean. It's Saturday, May 3rd. It is day 64 of Trump's war. This week, the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. Trump posted 11 AI-generated images in a period of 40 minutes at 11 p.m. one random night this past week. And James Comey indicted for posting Seashells that spelled 8647. And if you've been to the pumps in the past couple of days, gas is now at an eye-blistering $4.30 a gallon. Let's alphabetize this junk drawer. In our first segment, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act. On Wednesday, April 29th, Supreme Court struck down Louisiana's congressional map from the previous ruling in Louisiana versus Callais. The vote went 6-3 along ideological lines. No one is surprised by that. So this map created a second majority black district. The court has ruled that it was unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. Justice Alito expressed a majority opinion saying, allowing race to play any part in government decision-making represents a departure from the constitutional rule. Compliance with Section 2 thus could not justify the state's use of race-based redistricting here. Let me translate the gobbledygook. Creating districts that give black voters fair representation is now unconstitutional. What does this actually do? I was asking that question myself. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act technically still exists, but Justice Elena Kagan's dissent, which was joined by Sotomayor and Jackson, they're basically saying this decision renders Section 2 all but a dead letter. NPR did an analysis before the ruling. They're saying at least 15 House districts that are currently represented by black members of Congress are now at risk. The immediate impact of this, once again, to no one's surprise, the South leapt into action, Alabama being one of the first states to file an emergency motion. They did so the very next day. So they want to use legislature-drawn maps, which are already ruled as racially gerrymandered in the 2026 election, and early voting has already begun. Louisiana has to redraw the map, which means they're probably going to lose one Democratic-leaning district. And then states with GOP-controlled legislatures are going to clamor down to the redistricting House before midterms. Trump is the one pushing for the mid-decade redistricting, right? That happened last year. Texas led the way. Democratic states countered, like California's Proposition 50. The decision in this case gives Republicans a green light. Go ahead, redraw those maps, eliminate majority-minority districts, and claim that it's to avoid racial gerrymandering. In our next segment, let's talk about Trump's late-night posting spree. Nonsense. We're talking AI images out the proverbial and literal wazoo. So Friday night, May 2nd, Trump posted 11 times in between 11:03 p.m. and 11:45. Now, we know he's not actually the one doing the posts because he can't use a computer and can barely read. But in these 40 minutes, there were 11 different posts, and they were all AI-generated or in some way digitally altered images. Naturally, I thought we might have some fun with this, so I've collected them for your enjoyment. Let's review. In our first example, as you'll see above me, the number one thing, you can't ignore this, Trump is an 80-year-old man. And they've decided to hook him up with, 50s dad bod. Secondly, you know for a fact J.D. Vance doesn't look like that with his shirt off. He looks like the fucking Michelin Man. Marco Rubio, nonsense. I don't know who the ancient guy is up in the top right, but I know that the random babe does nothing to bring this to legitimacy. The next one, oh God, this AI image just sort of blows my mind in its sort of completely unnecessary. This is a mishmash of a bunch of different photos all slammed together, digitally edited together. You can tell because no one matches. Everyone has different lighting, even though they're all standing in the same place in one room. Then you have Melania just giving that ridiculous freaking smile towards the camera. Oh my gosh. You got mischievous Caroline Leavitt, giving the coy eyes to the camera. Hegseth staring in a different direction. Note that they're all looking at different things. But anyway, the real thing that gets me about this image is why? Why wouldn't you just have these people come together and create the photo that you're looking for? Why even stitch them together with AI? It just doesn't make any sense and seems like madness, frankly. Now, he continued on from there. There was a dream sequence of memes that spewed out. But what really killed me and totally surprised me was this last one that he posted. Yeah, what do you think about that? All right, that last one was me, but enjoy. What's the lens of interest? Like, why do reporters care about this? Well, I think the New York Times sums it up pretty well. Peter Baker had an article documenting Trump's erratic, bizarre, and dangerous behavior. People are basically calling this evidence of mental decline. The AI Jesus post where he lied and said, "Oh, I thought it was me as a doctor." The wild Pope feud because the Pope doesn't want us killing brown people. Random tangents about office supplies, late night posting sprees. The pattern here is that Biden's mental fitness dominated 2024 coverage, and then one debate ended his campaign. Meanwhile, Trump is posting stream of consciousness AI images at night. He's threatening the Pope, posting himself as Jesus, rambling about drapes. The media is finally asking, we've all been asking this, but the media is finally asking, is Trump losing it? Boston Globe had a quote where they said the article showed definitively a president in decline. And, though it stopped short of saying it, a man who many believe is losing his mind. Lost his marbles, lost my marbles. The comparison, again, Biden, one bad debate, media called him to drop out. He did. Trump has months of AI-generated delusions, threats to annihilate countries. Yeah, you remember that? The media, meanwhile, characterizes this as erratic behavior that's raising questions. Not the same energy, y'all. In our third story, I don't know why I'm seeming happy about this. On Tuesday, April 28th, FBI Director James Comey was indicted on 2 federal charges. The crime, you may wonder, Instagram post from May 2025 with a photo of seashells spelling out 8647 on a North Carolina beach. Deleted it, unfortunately, said he didn't realize people associated those numbers with violence. Now there's charges. Number 1, threats against the president and successors. Number 2, transmitting a threat in interstate commerce. The maximum penalty for these things is 10 years in prison. Now, here's the government's argument. They're saying 86 is slang for get rid of, or nix 47, Trump, the 47th president, meaning 8647 is a threat to kill the president, which is stupid. Acting AG Todd Blanche says a reasonable recipient who's familiar with the circumstances would interpret it as a serious expression of an intent to do harm. The defense on the other side here, the reasonable people recognize 86 is restaurant slang. It's been around for so long. I am lucky enough to be a survivor of the service industry. I worked in a restaurant for almost 10 years, and we used the term 86 almost every day. 86 the stuff sold, we had a wild rush on it for early birds. The thing that really pisses me off, being both an Italian and a survivor of the service industry, is that the Mango King is trying to say it's a mob term. And that is absolute bullshit, because if it was a mob term, everyone would have known that. The Sopranos folks are still part of the American cultural zeitgeist. Like, we love our gangster shit, and they've never used 86. Also, we have some examples, like Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer basically said 8645 on TV in 2020. Conservative Jack Posobiec tweeted 8646 during Biden's presidency. That's someone from your team, Republicans, using that. What's the context here? Gosh. Well, this is the second time Comey's been indicted since Trump took office. The first indictment, making false statements to Congress, obstruction. This was dismissed because the prosecutor was not lawfully appointed. Classic Trump administration incompetence, which we love. Then, as we know, Trump fired Bondi in April for not pursuing his enemies aggressively enough. So now Todd Blanche has stepped up and is Trump's whipping boy. Comey's daughter, Maureen, was fired from the DOJ. Some of you did not know this, filed a lawsuit claiming retaliation, and a judge has now allowed it to proceed. That happened this past week on Tuesday. Ultimately, it's a First Amendment issue, folks, right? The Supreme Court in 2023 said a true threat requires showing that the individual understood their message would be perceived as threatening. Legal experts say that's a pretty high bar, and 8647 in Seashells, unlikely to meet it. Thank God. So what I'm saying, folks, is she can no longer sell seashells down by the seashore, unless she wants to spend time in a federal prison. Here we go. World news in 1 minute. Iran war, day 64. I hate that rhymes. Pentagon price tag now says it's $25 billion down the hole. Congress grilled Hegseth on war costs. Please watch that. It's absolute nonsense. Gas is $4.30 a gallon. The War Powers Resolution was blocked again for the 6th time, and the 60-day deadline has passed under the 1973 War Powers Act. White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter. Cole Allen is now formally charged with attempting to assassinate the president. He remains in custody. the appeal for pretrial release was denied. Between Israel and Lebanon, 30-plus people were killed in Israeli strikes in one day. Hezbollah had a drone that injured 12 Israeli soldiers. Israel now controls 2/3 of Gaza with new maps, and over 1 million people have been displaced from Lebanon. That's 1/5 of the population. Congress has reopened Department of Homeland Security in the longest ever partial shutdown. That's finally ended, and TSA workers are now finally getting paid. 76ers Celtics. Any Boston fans here? The 76ers won Game 7. Ouchies, 109-100. Yeah, so series upset. Maine governor has dropped her bid for the U.S. Senate. That clears the way for Graham Plattner to step up into the Democratic nomination. That is your world, folks. A little scorched, but still cooking. In our main story today, the court done took your vote. Let's be clear about what happened on Wednesday. The Supreme Court didn't just strike down Louisiana's map. It basically dismantled 59 years of voter right protection. What Section 2 did was it protected minority voters from vote dilution. Basically, districts are drawn to minimize minority political power. An example, Louisiana is 33% black, so under fair representation, they should have at least 2 of the 6 congressional districts where black voters can elect their choice. The old map had 1 black majority district. In 2022, there was a lawsuit where the federal court ordered Louisiana to create a second black majority district. That would bring them up to the correct 2 out of 6 that we talked about, established by the Voting Rights Act. Louisiana drew the new map with those 2 black majority districts, and of course, white voters fucking sued, saying it was unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. The Supreme Court, unfortunately, agrees. So the immediate consequences, Alabama basically filed an emergency motion the next day. They want that old racially gerrymandered map back. Early voting has started. Guess who else jumped on that bandwagon? Florida, Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina are preparing redistricting. Not so great. Not in the future, now, before the 2026 midterms. What's the political impact of this? Well, New York Times, as I said earlier, said up to 12 seats could flip from Democratic to Republican through the redistricting. And wouldn't you know it, the Republicans currently control the House by an incredibly slim margin. So that plus 12 would expand the GOP majority and keep them in power. Before voters even cast ballots, mind you. Now, Justice Kagan established some dissent. She said, the court betrays its duty to faithfully implement the great statute Congress wrote. The court's decision will set back the foundational right Congress granted of racial equality in electoral opportunity. She read it from the bench, which is incredibly rare. That signals profound disagreement. What does it mean for democracy? Well, the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965 after Bloody Sunday. John Lewis nearly died on that bridge. The act led to abolishing voting tests, erasing racial disparities in registration, record numbers of black elected officials. Good shit. Then 2013, the Shelby County ruling removed preclearance requirement, and now 2026, Callais removes the vote dilution protection. Tough to say, but really important. Now, the act isn't dead officially, but it's unenforceable, so it's kind of dead. What is the end game? States can now draw districts that minimize black political power. Straight up, and the courts can't stop them. This happened while Trump is posting AI images at midnight and indicting political enemies over seashell Instagram posts. Folks, the foundations of democracy are being dismantled while we're distracted by the chaos. Pay attention. Oy, oy, oy. So here we are, day 64. Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. 15 different seats held by black members of Congress now are at risk. Trump posts 11 AI-generated nonsensors on Friday night. The media is finally asking, geez, you think he's lost his marbles? Comey's now being indicted for Seashells and writing 4 numbers side by side. Gas is at $4.30. Iran war is costing us at least $25 billion. And now we're on day 64 of, it'll be over in, 2 to 3 weeks. Y'all, the Supreme Court just took your vote while Trump is spamming memes and the DOJ prosecuted Seashells. If you learned something, I'm sorry. If you didn't, thank God, you're coping correctly. I'm Tino. This was Talk Show. I'll see you next week.